going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about The Ultimates Volume 2, Homeland Security by Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. This collects issues 7 through 13 of the first Ultimate series. Like I said a couple of videos ago, all of The Ultimates by Millar and Hitch was like 25, 26 issues, something like that. There were two series, both roughly 13 issues, and then each series is collected in two smaller volumes. You could probably also get like an omnibus or an Ultimate collection that collects like 13 issues, but this is part 2 of basically a 4-part series by Millar and Hitch. And my big problem with Volume 1 was that it was like 80% talking and like 20% action stuff. And I don't necessarily mean action scenes where people are punching each other. I mean a scene where something is happening. Something other than characters talking to each other about how expensive clothes are nowadays, or who would play who in a movie version of The Ultimates. Stuff like that. That's not action. An action scene could be somebody is prowling around in somebody else's office that they're not supposed to be prowling around in, and then they hear someone coming, so they hide under the desk. No punching, no explosions, no chasing or anything like that, but it's an action scene where something is happening and the plot is being advanced a little bit. This book has the exact opposite problem that Volume 1 has. There is a couple of issues at the very beginning where you're kind of dealing with the aftermath of what happened in the previous volume. We're seeing characters kind of dealing with the trauma of the Hulk attack, where this says over 300 people died in the Hulk attack in Volume 1. We get to see a little bit of that, and then we're also seeing the Ultimates reeling from finding out that Hank Pym is a wife-beater, and he very nearly killed Janet, his wife. I completely forgot to talk about that at the end of Volume 1, but that is happening here, and as I was reading this, I realized that the Amazon Prime TV series The Boys owes a lot to The Ultimates by Millar and Hitch. I have never read The Boys by Garth Ennis and I believe it was Steve Dillon. I could be wrong, I don't remember, but Garth Ennis and whoever his artistic collaborator was, if I'm wrong, it's on the screen right now, but I've never read that comic. I know that I would not enjoy it. I don't really enjoy a lot of Garth Ennis's writing, but the TV series, at least season 1, that's all I've watched, at least it felt like, okay, the Justice League, but they are handcuffed by the government and corporations. And how would this team operate when they're not punching bad guys if the corporations and the government are saying, okay, the polls are down on Superman, so we need him to go on Jimmy Fallon and be personable and tell a joke or something like that so that people will like Superman. That is kind of what's going on in The Boys, and we get a lot of that here also. At the end of Volume 1, Nick Fury asks Betty Ross, who is their PR person, how are you going to spin this in a positive way? Bruce Banner, who is our scientist behind the Ultimates, he just killed 300 people. And she says, that's easy, we're just not going to tell people that the Hulk is Bruce Banner. And now here we get even more of that, where when Janet is in the hospital and has nearly died, Nick Fury's response is, oh no, we designed Giant Man to be an action figure. How are we going to handle this? And you get Steve, he is he's acting like a human being, maybe not in a good way, but instead of worrying about their public image, he goes and he finds Giant Man and he beats him up. And so that is a human reaction. He's not worried about, oh no, how are the Ultimates going to be perceived by the public? Tony seems kind of half and half. He is kind of concerned that Betty didn't bother telling anyone that Hank Pym used to beat Janet when they were in college. She knew about that. He is kind of like, why didn't you say something? But also, he doesn't seem as concerned for Janet's well-being as Steve does. He seems more like, why didn't you say something? This affects all of us, kind of like Nick Fury. And so there's a lot of that there that I am really glad didn't make it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of people will say that the MCU, especially early on, was heavily informed by the Ultimate Universe, and I'm not sure if I can actually say yes it was or no it wasn't, since most of the Ultimate Universe was Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, X-Men, none of which was part of the MCU for a very long time. Some of it still not part of the MCU. But the Ultimates was just a small slither of the Ultimate Universe. And some of it did make its way into the Marvel movies. For example, there's one part here where there's a big war going on and they drop Bruce Banner out of a plane so that he will get stressed out and he will Hulk out. Something kind of like that happens in the Incredible Hulk movie, although I'm not actually sure when this came out. I know that The Incredible Hulk came out in 2008. I don't know. This had to have come out before 2008 because the early, I think Volume 1 came out in like 2002. So this has Bruce Banner being dropped out of a plane. And then also there was something else that was in here that really reminded me of the Marvel movies. And I can't remember what it was now. But you've got Tony Stark, who is at one point, I talked last week about the Ultimate Annuals. At one point, Tony said he's dated 7 girls a week since he was 15 years old. And Tony is very much a Lothario in the Ultimate Universe. I don't know how much of a ladies' man he was in the main Marvel Universe before the Ultimate started. I don't think he was as much as Ultimate Tony was, but I have hardly read any Iron Man in the main Marvel Universe. And what I have read came after the Ultimate Universe. So this could be kind of like how in the X-Men movies where Magneto's helmet blocks telepathy, and when I watched that X-Men movie, I just kind of assumed that that was a thing in the comics, but then when you go back and look at the comics, that's not really a thing. It could be that Tony sleeping with every woman on the planet, that kind of has just wormed its way into everyone's conscious, and so now people will go back and read an Iron Man comic from the 80s, and just because Tony's not sleeping with a woman in that issue, they would just assume, well, he's sleeping with her in between panels. So I don't know how much this informed. This definitely, Tony was very much a like, ooh, I see a lady over there, I like that, at least at first, like in the first couple movies, and then by the time you get to Ultimate Iron Man 3, that's kind of, he's a one-woman show, but you get this, and that kind of, if that is something that they kind of changed a little bit, then that definitely made its way into the Marvel movies. But getting back to what I was saying earlier, this has the exact opposite problem that the first volume has, where it's just a whole lot of talking, and then there's a couple of issues where there's one issue where they fight the Hulk, and then there's another issue that's kind of the aftermath of that. And then this volume, there's a couple of issues where they are talking a little bit about the Hulk thing, they're talking a little bit about Wasp being beaten up by Hank, and then everything hits the fan, and it's just solid action for like 5 issues straight. They find out there was an alien invasion back in like the 1770s. There's this alien species called the Chitauri, which is basically the ultimate version of the Skrulls. Later on in the Ultimate Fantastic Four series, we actually see the Skrulls, and they say the Chitauri are kind of an off-branch of their species, but they are like extreme terrorists, and the Skrulls aren't. But at one point, the Chitauri says, some species call us the Skrulls, or I think he said maybe Africa they were called the Skrulls, I can't remember. But anyway, we find out that the Chitauri has been active. They've been on Earth since 1777, but then they were trying to take over the world in World War II, and then they were stopped. And their whole thing is they want to put a stop to independent thought. And they think, okay, none of us, like, we don't really have individual personalities. And that's not true, because each of them acts very differently. Like the leader of the aliens, I can't remember his name, but like at one point the Wasp says, okay, if you guys are trying to eradicate independent thought, why do you each have individual names? And he says, well, there was a German officer who offered his body to us as part of our alliance, and he says that the alien ate the German officer and now has his body, and then he says he wants to do that to the Wasp. He wants to eat her so that he will take the form of her body, and then that, you know, very different from the Skrulls. But yeah, they say they want to eradicate independent thought, but really, when you read this, the aliens all still kind of have their own individual personalities, so that doesn't really make sense. And also they say we are doing this across the entire universe. We're not just doing it on Earth. We have been trying to eradicate thought all over the universe. And then out of nowhere, oh, and for a couple of issues, you are led to believe that most of the Ultimates are dead. Jan is back at the Triskelion, Bruce Banner is imprisoned at the Triskelion, and then Hank Pym is in a hospital somewhere after Captain America beat him up, but everyone else has gone on the other side of the world because they were told that there was a big base of the Chitauri there. And then it turns out, and then there's a giant bomb that blows up the whole compound, and seemingly everyone is dead. And then the alien leader is talking to Jan. He has her imprisoned in a Pyrex container, and then turns out, the Ultimates are still alive. And then it's just, like I said, it feels like a Michael Bay movie, where it's just non-stop action, and it hurts your head watching it. This would be the equivalent of like 45 minutes or more of solid action scenes with one-liners sprinkled in there. And it feels a lot like a Michael Bay movie. And I don't know which I prefer. I don't know if I prefer like 80% of the book just being talking with a little bit of action in there, or if I prefer like 20% talking with the rest of the book being action. Because both of them, I feel like the scales are woefully imbalanced, and I feel like it should be a little bit more even. As I said, comparing this to the first Avengers movie, it's not until the end of the movie that you start getting a whole lot of fight scenes, but you get a little bit in there sprinkled throughout the beginning of the movie. You get Hawkeye getting taken over by Loki, and then Nick Fury shooting at people, and then Black Widow, she's fighting the people who were torturing her, and then she goes to talk to Bruce Banner, and then he yells at her a little bit, and then there's the whole helicarrier scene where Bruce hulks out, and Loki and Hawkeye attack again, and then there's the whole end of the movie. And so they knew, that movie knows, to sprinkle in just enough stuff happening, so it's not just people talking for 2 hours and then half an hour of fighting. And this book and the previous one, they don't really seem to understand, okay, what kind of balance do we need to strike? Overall, I enjoyed it. It is a little weird reading this, where Nick Fury says there are 11 different alien species on Earth right now, and the Chitauri is one of them. And then the Chitauri leader says that they have been taking over the entire universe. And incidentally, some Chitauri just come out of nowhere, and they're like, everyone's fighting back all over the universe. They're all fighting back all at once. And that certainly seems really convenient, that suddenly the Chitauri are defeated all across the universe. This just feels like a plot twist just happens. What would be preferable would be if somehow, if Banner is able to come up with some kind of chemical that they squirt into one of the Chitauri, and then they all have a hive mind, and then they're all weakened all across the universe, and then someone says, oh no, they're fighting against us all across the universe. Character informs plot. That is preferable. If you can have plot informing character and character informing plot, that's even better. But when it's just plot just happening so that the bad guys can be defeated all over the universe, and there's seemingly no reason for this plot thing happening, that's kind of sloppy. But anyway, not a whole lot left to talk about in this volume. It does introduce Hawkeye and Black Widow for a little bit. It brings in Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who were introduced in the Ultimate X-Men run. Now they're part of the Ultimates. And then Hank Pym, he's no longer part of the team. Bruce Banner, he's in prison. And then, yeah, that's about all I have to say about Ultimates Volume 2, Homeland Security. I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, I will see you guys in the future with something else. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.